Dartmoor. It gets under your skin. I'm Nick Baker, and I've lived and worked here for most of my life. The moor's romance, mystery, and its people have been inspiring artists and artisans for generations.
And it's those human traces that I'm going in search of, to find out how our perceptions of Dartmoor have been shaped by those makers of images and objects over the last 2 centuries.
Look at that. Isn't that lovely?
It's enough to make you start believing in pixies.
Granite. It's the very bedrock of Dartmoor.
Around about 300 million years ago, this was molten rock deep in the bowels of the earth. Subsequently, it's been forced to the surface, it's cooled down, and the surrounding rocks have eroded, leaving us with the famous granite tors of Dartmoor. Exactly the sort of things that people love to visit, especially on sunny mornings like today. But Dartmoor hasn't always been a playground.
For centuries, the High Moor was a wild and feared place, inhabited only by those hardy enough to cope with the rugged isolation. The toughest came in search of tin, copper, and other valuable ores, and there was plenty to find.
Miners and mining have made their mark on the Dartmoor landscape, and I'm here at Kelly Mines to have a look at one of the best preserved examples.
And to discover how even the harshest of wells can produce something quite beautiful.
This is fabulous.
As a naturalist, I'm excited to find these cave spiders scurrying across the seam of micaceous hematite that the miners were after. They called it the shiny ore.
That's a massive, great big solid block of the stuff. If I rub my fingers on it and then show you my hands, so you may recognise it from bridges, lampposts, traffic lights. And it is a rust-inhibiting paint ingredient. But look at that, it's just like glitter in the beam of my torch. And as I walk through this mine shaft, competing with the twinkling eyes of the cave spiders are the twinkling of deposits of this ore. It's enough to make you start believing in pixies. Well, we've squelched our way to the end of this particularly drippy adit, and we're about as far as we can go. There's been a catastrophic rockfall here, which brings to mind, I guess, just how dangerous and unpleasant it would have been working these mines. It's wet, it's cold, and of course there's the continuous threat of the actual mines caving in. And I'm standing here in my nice, warm, waterproof, protective gear. Back then, your safety gear would have been much more rudimentary.
And by rudimentary, this is what I mean.
This here, this amazing artefact, is actually not an item of safety as such, because this was what an injured tin miner would wear once he had had an accident. So this was how you would extract him from the mine without getting further damage, we assume. Its origin is the copper mines in the Belstone area, but it is quite a beautiful thing in a sort of slow macabre way.
Whoever made this, and we don't know who did, was really skillful, weaving the wicker and fitting the leather inside. I've been given permission to try it on.
I feel like Darth Vader's rural cousin. Sort of a little bit eerie because you don't quite know who wore it last and when it was actually used for its original purpose. Oh, that's brilliant. What a thing.
a beautiful and rare object crafted out of necessity. For the 19th century workman, free time was a rarity. No miner would have dreamed that while he was risking his life making a living underground, a whole new industry was taking hold above: tourism. And it was being driven by artists. Art historian Dr. Jenny Graham says a new type of painting was being commissioned by the gentry to adorn the walls of their country houses: landscapes.
Suddenly the idea of nature and the great outdoors becomes a culturally fashionable pursuit, and artists particularly pick up on this. In the very earliest decades of the 19th century, very famously Turner popularises Devon.
Artists like the celebrated J.M.W. Turner painted the pretty accessible bits. Neither they nor the early visitors ventured into the heart of the moor, where the miners and the farmers toiled. There were few roads and treacherous bogs.
The reputation of Dartmoor really transforms in the 19th century. In the 18th century, it was much more seen as a place to be feared and shunned. This was also a social reception of Dartmoor. The inhabitants were looked down upon as being coarse and common people.
This picture marks the start of a change in Dartmoor's image. Painted in 1820 by Exeter artist Francis Stevens, it's the view from the top of what has become a well-known beauty spot, Lustley Cleeve. The Stevens painting is believed to be hugely significant by local art researcher Peter Mason.
The importance of this painting is it's probably the first large-scale painting of what one could say the moor proper, as opposed to one of those sites around the edge of the moor.
Right, let's put ourselves in the picture.
We're trying to find the spot where Peter thinks the painting was made. Will the view be the same 200 years on?
Look at that! Now, this is quite a view. Is this the view?
I don't think it's quite right, because the Stevens painting is looking down the valley.
Okay.
I think we should go down towards, in that direction, because I think the painting is looking down the Cleeve beyond these rocks over there. I think it's probably down here, Nick. If we go around past this tree here.
Oh, it's not far then. It really is
No.
It's almost changing our perspective, but it's a completely different view.
And that's because now it's a woodland.
I think, you see that rock there?
Yeah.
I think that's that big rock there, still with the ivy
Yes.
growing over it. I think probably these rocks in the foreground are these rocks here behind us.
They were coming to a working landscape, and
Yeah.
the reason it was as naked is because the trees were being utilised, and of course, if they were allowed to grow, because of course all the livestock would have been grazing. So let's try and put ourselves in the right spot. So where do you reckon that one is?
He's sitting possibly on that one
Can
there.
only be there. Let's see if we can get into it. It'll be something. I've got to look at you sort of adoringly, haven't I? According to that painting, I've got to be looking up at this.
Yeah.
Had we been well-to-do 18th century tourists, our landscape pictures would not have been of Devon, but bought in Naples or Rome as souvenirs of the Grand Tour.
The Grand Tour was incredibly influential here. This was a vacation, a cultural vacation undertaken by usually young, gentrified European travellers, young men who would travel out and take in all of the glories of the classical tradition.
By the 1780s, though, Europe was at war with Napoleon.
The Napoleonic Wars really put a stop to the Grand Tour. Young English visitors were not able to travel widely in Europe, and there's a turn inward to the local landscape. And it becomes a much more serious enterprise then, post-Napoleonic Wars, to depict a landscape that is stern and vast.
Dartmoor, with its massive granite tors, was thrillingly stern and vast. And by this time, it had an added attraction: Dartmoor Prison. Founded in 1806 in Princetown and built by and for the Napoleonic prisoners of war, it became a place of guilty fascination for visitors. This was the dark and dangerous Dartmoor of old. Yet from this place emerged work of intricate beauty. This model of a French man-of-war was made by a prisoner, not for his own pleasure, but for his survival. It was sold in the prison market to locals, for money, for food. The same prisoners who built this model and others like it helped to build Princetown's St Michael's Church. On a cold, damp day like today, the church is as dismal as the prison surely was.
Very, very cold. There were no windows at all in those prisons. You know, the water was actually running down the walls. And of course, it attracted a lot of disease. More than 1,200 French nationals or French prisoners died at Dartmoor prison.
This 200-year-old scrimshaw model, as it's known, is now owned by French Honorary Consul Alain Siberil. It's fragile, so he's returning it to its case before it's damaged by the damp Dartmoor air.
So this is made of bones from the dinner, effectively?
From the dinner, yes, from the rations that they had. You know, they had beef sometimes to eat, not in great quantities, but nevertheless they would keep the bones and would work with the tools that they had and arrive at such a fantastic piece of art.
So it's interesting that out of all the squalor and the negativity of the prison came this beautiful object, but the fact it's a ship as well.
Yes, don't forget, they were sailors, mainly. So they would try to reproduce what they were probably captured on. And they were possibly imagined that, you know, one day they would go back to their home country on board a ship.
They'd sail away from all this.
And send them all this, absolutely.
Just never fails to amaze me what humans are capable of when they're pushed to it.
A victorious Britain, fresh from defeating Napoleon at Waterloo, was already enjoying the fruits of the Industrial Revolution. Soon it would embrace new technologies in art and travel. The mid-19th century brought mass transport to the southwest and put Dartmoor within reach. Railways cut journey times from London to Devon from 16 hours to just 4.5. Paintings of Dartmoor could now be reproduced as etchings and were printed in that new must-have, the guidebook.
Here's one from 1886, I believe, Tourist Guide to South Devon. But there's one quote which is about Moreton Hampstead, which is a major town just up the valley. And it says about Moreton Hampstead, within living, if aged memory, the only approach to Moreton was on foot or by pack horse, and no wheeled vehicle larger than a wheelbarrow had ever been seen in the neighbourhood. Wow, how things have changed.
The intrepid visitors were looking for more than scones and jam. They sought out the land of the folklore and legends that cling to Dartmoor. Just as artists created a rural vision, so villagers were reviving ancient traditions like maypole dancing here in Lusley. Since 1905, the May Queens had their names carved into a granite rock. Wendy was May Queen in 1971.
You practice doing the May Day dancing for about 2 weeks in April, and then you have the grand day of the May Day.
How do you get chosen to be the May Queen?
From about 11, I think, to about 13, your names then got put into a hat, and you just picked out as being the May Queen.
And that's how it happened.
And that's how
there
it
you
all
are.
happens.
There
Yes,
you are,
which is
forever
lovely.
carved
I
in
know, it's
Dartmoor
great,
granite.
isn't it?
So what have you got some pictures here?
I've got some pictures there.
Is this
of
this
me.
is the day?
That was me, yes.
This is you here
On the church
wow,
steps.
Look at that. So
It
you,
is.
you've got to dance in order to be chosen to be the
Yeah,
May Queen.
yeah.
Yes. I remember May Queens and May dancing in the village I grew up in East Sussex,
Right.
but I never remember it being. It's probably because I was never chosen as a May Queen. But I never remember it like this. I never remember it being quite such a big deal.
As the Victorian tourists arrived in greater numbers, so demand for Dartmoor souvenirs grew. Local painters saw an opportunity knocking.
The artists best known for popularising Dartmoor were the Widgerys, William and his son Frederick.
William Widgery was a stonemason and a self-taught painter from Exeter. Not afraid to alter a scene to make it more pleasing, William Widgery's romantic vistas, like this famous painting of Fingal Bridge, put Dartmoor firmly on the map.
William Widgery is famed in the annals of 19th century art as being a tremendously well-sold artist. He produced, we think, almost 3,000 paintings, most of which were sold during his lifetime.
It's thought William Widgery became very wealthy from selling his art. In fact, so wealthy, he had this unusual granite block cross erected here on Brat Tor to honour Queen Victoria. And maybe even himself.
Widgery's wild romantic moorland is not the whole truth. Dartmoor is a largely man-made landscape, hewn by the hands of farmers and miners. It is still a working community, and you don't need to go into a museum to realise that. You can simply go to the bar of a local Dartmoor hostelry.
Now, the object I've come to see is actually a picture, and it's just over there. And there it is, it's fantastic, and it's taken just up the road from here as well. Now, Chris Chapman, the man who took this photograph, and many others here in the bar, has been documenting life here on Dartmoor for over 40 years. Just so happens, I know him quite well, so we're going to go and meet him. Hey, Chris.
How are you?
I'm very good, how are you doing?
I'm really
Good to
well.
see you.
Come on in.
It's been a while.
Nice to see you.
Great, thank you. So how long have you been here?
I came in the winter of 1975 with the intention of staying 1 year. The previous year, I'd gone round Dartmoor for 3 weeks with a donkey, and people referred to me as the donkey man. And I had my tent, all my cameras, and really with the idea of photographing, and that really got me going. But after a year of living on Dartmoor, I just got sucked in, and I just thought, actually, I love this place.
People tend to think of Dartmoor as it's a landscape, it's big skies, it's that sort of bare geology, I guess. You seem to be more about the people.
That's right. I'm much more interested in the people. In the same way, you know, that you as a naturalist, you know, you've made your home here on Dartmoor, you're interested in the flora and the fauna of Dartmoor. That flora and fauna is dictated by the very landscape that it inhabits.
Very much so.
And where all these things grow. It's the same, to me, in my mind, that the landscape dictates how people live their lives. I'm much more interested in documenting those people within the landscape, which is what all this is about.
During his perambulations around Dartmoor, he got to know Abina, Ben as she's always known, and her daughter, Beryl.
That's not your donkey, is it?
No, this is Donny Donks, and this is young Beryl Hutchings, and the story is rather lovely. And she would meet Beryl off the school bus. Beryl went to Princetown Primary School, and bring her back to the farm. And of course I saw this happening, and I just thought, it's just such a lovely occasion. So I was intent on photographing it.
Chris's images are not only on pub walls, but they're also on greetings cards and in books. Chris is the widgery of his time. His subjects are Dartmoor for many people.
Down, down, get down.
It's 40 years since Chris took that picture of Ben and Beryl on their donkey, and here they are, mother and daughter. They still live on Dartmoor, and today Chris is planning a new family portrait.
Okay.
Boise!
And this time Ben wants her favourite ram Boise in the picture.
Boise!
Ben's partner Bill makes sure the new star of the show is ready for his close-up.
Sorry, Bill, you're being overshadowed by a sheep. Good to see you. Do you remember that picture being taken? Because it's a bit of a legendary picture.
Oh yeah, it was lovely coming down from school, wasn't it?
Yeah. Mother used to make me from school, you know, with a donkey and a dog. And then there's ICD, hide behind a fuzz bush, and he went like that. So that's why I'm smiling. And Mother didn't see him.
Yeah, and a bush bush she was.
Well, I hiding behind a gorse bush.
So,
I might have been taken short.
Are the images that you see in Chris's photographs, are they still to be had? Is the farming changing much?
everybody used to help each other out years ago, whereas all that's gone. There's nobody, you know. You still get your odd ones that will still do it, but a lot of it you do on your own now, and, you know, there's a lot harder.
Bill, I've got one of you with him, so I want you with me, because I'm just going to do the portrait of the two of them. All right? And get behind him. That'll be lovely. All right. That's nice.
Where do I go now with her?
Bill, if you go there, yeah.
Well, I've known Chris for ages, but I've never actually seen him press the shutter on a camera. So this is quite a novel experience. But part of me can't help but think, in 40 years' time, will I be seeing this photograph on a pub wall?
Look at that. Isn't that lovely? Look at me there, Ben. That's lovely. Ben. Mother. Beryl, you look at me too, love. Come on. That's lovely. That is so nice.
Even Boise's paying attention.
Again.
Look at that.
Me, look everybody. Thank you very much.
That's the Chris Chapman magic, like that. Everything performs all in one go.
That's it. That is it.
Chris's vision of Dartmoor is just one modern representation. This is the moor seen through the eyes of fine art photographer Gary Fabian Miller. His works are held in collections worldwide, and for the last 30 years, all his work has been about Dartmoor.
As time goes on, you realise how precious Dartmoor is. I mean, I'd say this is one of the best days I've seen up here for a few weeks. So, I mean, look at this weather system that we're in. I mean, Haytor is just floating in that storm over there. Every time I come, it's going to give in another way. And this is as good as it gets. Dartmoor is an incredibly popular and loved place. There's a sense of deep time, which is very easily available if you're willing to walk out into the landscape, whether it's river valley, wooded landscapes, or up onto the open moor. There's a sense of a privileged access to a very big space.
Gary interprets what he sees using photographic techniques in his studio, and he's going to show me how he does it.
On the wall, I work with the light and allow it to go to some places and not to other places. The exposures may vary between 30 seconds and a day and a night, 24 hours. So I'm pushing all of the materials as far as they can be pushed to try and reveal qualities of light and colour within the dyes on the surface of the paper that I'm working with.
For an artist, it's all about the light. He works almost completely in the dark.
I think of the brain as being like a light-sensitive surface, and the images which come through my eyes are recorded on that space. And then when I come in here, I'm trying to find ways to make images which have something of the spirit and the essence of experiences of things I've seen or felt or sensed could be there.
The photographic paper Gary uses is no longer made. Once it's gone, this way of working will go too. His darkroom will be dismantled and rebuilt as an exhibit in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And a collection of his work explaining his relationship to Dartmoor will be displayed at Exeter's museum.
So this is a book that takes you into your mind.
I think it's just trying to open it up a bit more for people, because I think as my work's coming to an end, I think it's important that people understand the pictures come out of a life. I totally understand a community that would live its life around things like hawthorn, blossom time. And as far as I'm concerned, if we can have a world which builds its life around things like that, what a good world it's going to be. I know that this is the place I have to be at this moment, and if I'm not here and I'm somewhere else in the world, I'm going to be a very sad person. There's something about Dartmoor which has a meaning far, far away from here. The kinds of pictures I make have a resonance with people in many other parts of the world. And I think something of this place called Dartmoor is quite exciting to them. You know, it's something they have heard of, and it's a meaningful place. And a lot of them, their only knowledge of this place is through my pictures and what's written about it. So I think that's kind of quite exciting.
I've seen Gary's work, and there's been elements of it that draw me in and that are very familiar, but I've not been really that aware of where in my life that comes in until I see this. And it's so much more than just a tree flowering. It's a celebration of a whole life process coming together in one moment. And then when I turn the page and I see that, and now it's all coming together for me.
Centuries ago, Dartmoor was feared and shunned. Few ventured here. And yet today, here we are in this stunning place.
It's a place sold to us by the likes of Stevens and the Widgerys through their art.
They brought it into the light, fired the public imagination, and we now enjoy Dartmoor as a national park. The artists and the makers have each recorded their vision of this place. As a land of legends, a place of hard graft,
Look at that, isn't that lovely?
a thriving community,
That is it.
With gritted teeth.
and a place to escape from. My Dartmoor is this slab of granite rock rolling out before me.
And I have to say, it's a landscape I will never, ever get tired of.